What's up, world? I'm Cameron McKinney, and this is Pop Culture Spotlight, a podcast about the movie The Bikeriders. Here's a quick synopsis. Kathy Bauer, while being interviewed by photojournalist Danny Lyon, chronicles the rise of her husband Benny's motorcycle gang, the Vandals. The film stars Austin Butler, Jodi Comer, Tom Hardy, Michael Shannon, Boyd Holbrook, and Mike Feist. Standout performances. We've seen it a lot where an actor gets a breakout Oscar nomination, but then the momentum gets away from them career-wise. And that's not what's happening with Austin Butler. His 2024 includes a villainous role in the biggest movie of the year so far, Dune Part 2, a leading role in the limited series Masters of Air, and now he's playing the coolest character he's ever played, Benny. And he's perfect for the role. It's a subdued performance. I'm fully on board with this guy being one of the biggest movie stars on the planet at the moment. My favorite shot of him in The Bikeriders is when his character is riding a motorcycle and runs out of gas. You need an actor like Butler to make this guy worth caring about because he doesn't want to live a normal life with a normal job. One could describe him as selfish, yet his magnetic charm gets people drawn to him. No actor has been as cool on a bike since Ryan Gosling in The Place Beyond the Pines. And with Butler's newfound stardom comes unlimited movie choices, and there's talk of a Pirates of the Caribbean movie and being in a live-action Hercules film, and it's okay to be in those kind of movies, but they better be high quality. I desperately want him to be in the rumored Heat 2 with Adam Driver. What Butler has on the horizon is Ari Aster's next movie, Eddington, which is star-studded. It includes Joaquin Phoenix, Emma Stone, and Pedro Pascal. I want Butler to continue to work with directors of that stature. I first became aware of Jodi Comer in 2021, where she played pivotal roles in Ridley Scott's The Last Duel with Matt Damon and Adam Driver, and Sean Levy's Free Guy with Ryan Reynolds. She's the best thing in those movies, and you could certainly make the case that she's the best thing about The Bikeriders. In the movie, she plays Kathy, and while the performance so far has been widely praised, I've also heard some detractors saying her accent and energy in the movie is distracting. Here's where I'm at when it comes to the conversations about actors doing accent work. I think absolutely no one is consistent when it comes to talking about actors changing their voices for a role. There are so many Oscar-winning performances with actors doing drastic voices. Philip Seymour Hoffman in Capote, Frances McDormand in Fargo, Sean Connery in The Untouchables, and possibly the most famous example is Marissa Tomei in My Cousin Vinny. These are heralded as great performances, and that's what Comer is giving in The Bikeriders, a great performance. I would also like to point out that the director of The Bikeriders, Jeff Nichols, has consistently gotten other great performances from actresses. Jessica Chastain in Take Shelter, Reese Witherspoon and Sarah Paulson in Mud, Kirsten Dunst in Midnight Special, Ruth Negga in Loving, and now you can add Jodi Comer in The Bikeriders to that list. Comer's next movie is the sequel to 28 Days Later, 28 Years Later with Cillian Murphy, Ralph Fiennes and Aaron Taylor Johnson, with Danny Boyle returning to direct. She's also going to star in The Death of Robin Hood with Hugh Jackman, written and directed by Michael Sarnowski. Tom Hardy will always best be known for his work in those big Christopher Nolan movies, Inception, The Dark Knight Rises, and Dunkirk, and I love him in those. But what's been somewhat overlooked throughout his career is his work in smaller scale films, 2008's Bronson, where he plays the infamous criminal, 2011's Warrior, where he plays Tommy, a vet who enters a mixed martial arts tournament against his brother, 2012's Lawless, where he plays Forrest, an overprotective brother trying to make money during Prohibition, 2013's Locke, where Hardy plays the only character on screen, 2014's The Drop, where he shared the screen with the late great James Gandolfini, and The Bikerider, like those, is a pure showcase of what Tom Hardy is capable of doing as an actor. In the film, he plays Johnny, a man who starts a biker gang because he was inspired by Marlon Brando in The Wild Bunch. And he's a really interesting figure in the movie because he's not just a normal guy in charge who has no idea what he's doing. Instead, he's a guy who is afraid of the group he's created. He's somewhat self-aware. He's just too afraid to tell anyone. And there seems to be this consensus that this is a return to form form for Hardy, and I would just like to say I've never been down on him as an actor. I've always viewed him as great. With every Hardy movie, there's always talk about what he does with his voice. Here's what Hardy himself told Variety's Katzy Steffen about his dialect in The Bikeriders. Quote, "What's important to me is that if you're doing something as an actor, if you're going to commit, then make the effort to fully commit. Even if you fail, it doesn't matter. I'd rather go out swinging, trying something to make the effort, than not make the effort at all, because there doesn't seem to be any point in playing safe. One of the things I hold myself to as a principle is that you're going to make an effort to create a vocal silhouette, as well as a physical silhouette. Accent work is not about phonetics or being accurate to me. It's about conjuring an atmosphere from a place which is authentic." End quote. Hardy is set to play Venom one final time in Venom: The Last Dance and lead director Gareth Evans' next film Havoc with Timothy Olyphant and Forrest Whitaker. And I need to put this out there that I need him to be in the upcoming Peaky Blinders movie with Cillian Murphy. It would make up for the fact that he wasn't in Oppenheimer. And finally, the collaboration between Michael Shannon and Jeff Nichols is one of the best actor-director pairings in modern movie making. Shannon has been in all 6 of Nichols' movies, 3 of them in leading roles, Shotgun Stories, Take Shelter, and Midnight Special, and 3 of them in supporting ones, Mud, Loving, and The Bikeriders, where he plays Zipko, a member of the Vandals, who gives a monologue about how everyone in this group is an outsider. Shannon lately has been doing these supporting parts in Bullet Train, Amsterdam, The Flash, and now The Bikeriders, and for how good the actor is as a scene stealer, I think it's time he plays a lead again, because Mike Shannon is one of our great actors. The performance of his I love the most comes in 99 Homes with Andrew Garfield. I hope he's the lead of the next Jeff Nichols movie. Shannon's upcoming projects include the movies The End with Tilda Swinton and George McKay, and Nuremberg with Rami Malek and Russell Crowe. Shannon also made his directorial debut on the upcoming film Eric LaRue, starring Judy Greer, Tracy Letts, and Alexander Skarsgård. Jeff Nichols is one of my all-time favorite filmmakers. I love his films. He's one of those directors who made me love movies. The first movie of his I saw was Mud, and in that film he brought out the very best in Matthew McConaughey. He let a larger-than-life actor play a larger-than-life figure. He also makes gorgeous-looking films, which are hard to come by nowadays. Before The Bikeriders, the last movie Nichols made was 2016's Loving, and I never want to go an 8-year stretch without a film from him again. I don't know what it is about writer-directors. They are the ones who just seemingly have full control of the craft. He's making the movies he wants to make, and Nichols has been thinking about this movie, The Bikeriders, for a long time. Here's what he told Rolling Stones' Mike Lee about the challenge of adapting Danny Lyons' photo book into a movie. Quote, "One reason it took me so long to write it is because I really had to figure out the balance of what to fictionalize. It's a really strange hybrid because so much of what Danny recorded, so much of his book is in the film. You know, I would probably say 70% of the dialogue is built out of the recordings that he did in the 60s. But I also remember having conversations with Danny about fictionalizing the club itself and the importance of that. The Outlaws still exist, and I really didn't want to step on their toes. Also, I didn't want to be beholden to their history of their club. The thing that really interested me was Danny's incredible portrait of people, the photographs, of course, but when you combine it with these interviews, you get this complicated, complete picture of these people," end quote. I personally feel like Jeff Nichols is a master filmmaker, and I know most people have never heard his name because the way you become a famous director is you either make hit movies or you win so many Oscars that we can no longer ignore you. Jeff Nichols is in this weird space as a filmmaker. He makes these indie movies with big stars, yet not a lot of people see them. Another thing going against him becoming a popular filmmaker is he really does not care about plot. I mean, there is a plot in the Bikeriders, but it's not straightforward. His movies are always structurally different than most popular films. And at one point, Jeff Nichols was linked to make the next Quiet Place film, the prequel that's now coming out, Quiet Place Day One, and I don't know how that would have worked out for Jeff Nichols. I think that movie made a lot of sense because the first film, A Quiet Place, has some themes that you can see in other Jeff Nichols movies. He cares about family, he cares about characters, and that's certainly in the first Quiet Place film, but I don't want Jeff Nichols to make a Quiet Place movie. I want Jeff Nichols to make Jeff Nichols movies. I think Hollywood doesn't give people enough credit for what they are good at doing. And what Jeff Nichols is good at doing is making movies about characters over plot. That's what he's good at. And I feel like Hollywood doesn't reward enough people for being good at what they are doing. They're always trying to change them. Like, people criticize Michael Bay all of the time. Oh, he doesn't make Oscar movies. He doesn't make movies with good acting. He just makes these big movies. Guess what? That's what Michael Bay is great at doing. That's why he should continue to make those kind of movies. And I think Jeff Nichols should continue to make these kind of movies like The Bikeriders. And hopefully at one point he's going to make a movie with such great actors that he's going to hit the zeitgeist. I already see that happening with The Bikeriders. A lot of people are talking about this movie. A lot of people will eventually see this movie because it has Austin Butler, because it has Jodi Comer, and because it has Tom Hardy, actors that are recognizable. Just based on his filmography, Jeff Nichols should be given the right to make whatever kind of movies he wants to make. And clearly the best actors in the world want to work with this guy. All of his films are really good to great. I personally think Mud is a masterpiece. And The Bikeriders was a movie I was waiting years for, and what I think The Bikeriders conveys more than almost any other movie is how hard it is for men to share how they are feeling about other people or themselves. And you'll get what I'm talking about after watching Hardy's Johnny. There's one scene where Comer's Kathy asks him, "Do you have something you want to tell me?" And it's the most heartbreaking scene of the movie. This guy thinks he has to pretend to be this tough biker instead of being himself. He's a real tragic character. It's always interesting when a movie like this comes out and you hear the comparisons that other people are making about it. Like, I've heard a lot of people compare this movie to Goodfellas. And yeah, I get it. That's a hard thing to compare something to because Goodfellas is one of the best movies of all time. That's Martin Scorsese. The Bikeriders is not on that level, but it is a really unique and great movie in and of its own right. And then if you want to compare it to another motorcycle movie, I mean, this is almost nothing like Easy Rider. That's a great film with Dennis Hopper, Jack Nicholson, and of course Peter Fonda. I don't see The Bikeriders as that much similar to that movie, other than the motorcycles. One thing I'm always thinking about when I'm watching a period piece movie is, what is this movie trying to say about modern times? And I think The Bikeriders has a lot to say about modern times. I think there are a lot of people currently in the world who are part of groups that they do not understand, and they just want to be in that group to be in that group. There is a group mentality out there in today's society. A lot of people are part of dangerous groups that they don't fully understand. Another thing that really resonates with me is that when you start a group, you don't really understand where it's going to go. You have no control where it's headed. It at some point becomes its own thing, and that's what happened in The Bikeriders, and that certainly happens in the real world. You see it all of the time. Oscar chances. The performance in this movie with the best chance at an Oscar nomination has to be Jodi Comer. I think she was overlooked for her performance in The Last Duel, and I think her work as Kathy is a classic Oscar performance. Now, do I think she's going to win the Oscar? No way, but it's so early to tell. I do think she has a legitimate chance to be one of the 5 nominated for Best Leading Actress. Austin Butler is not going to get an Oscar nomination for his work in The Bikeriders, although I do believe his appearance in this movie could help him get the Best Supporting Actor nomination for his work as Feyd-Rautha in Dune Part 2. I think that's how this works. Great years from an actor can help get them nominated for one of their performances in that year. We've seen it before. I could definitely see Austin Butler getting nominated for Dune Part 2 and this movie, The Bikeriders, being a big part in that. Butler, of course, already has that nomination from Elvis. I think this is a guy who's going to end up being a multi-time Oscar nominee and possibly a multi-time Oscar-winning actor. Tom Hardy is an interesting one. I think this is one of the best performances of Tom Hardy's career. He has only been nominated for an Oscar one time in his career, and that was for The Revenant. That was a prestigious film. There are other times that he was overlooked. He didn't get nominated for Inception. He definitely should have been nominated for that film. He's got the star power, so I wouldn't be surprised if the Academy nominates Tom Hardy. I mean, he's Tom Hardy, and it is definitely an Oscar-worthy performance. And finally, at some point, they have to nominate Jeff Nichols. He's one of the best director-writers who have not yet received an Oscar nomination. I think he should be nominated for the screenplay for this movie. I think he is a fantastic writer. His movies surprise you and always are filled with purpose. Like, you can tell this man has thought about the movies that he's making. And I know that's a ridiculous statement to make because clearly every writer-director thinks a lot about the movies they make. But the choices that Jeff Nichols makes, you can tell he has really thought them out. And yes, I would absolutely love to see him get a Best Directing nomination as well, but I don't think that's going to happen. Not for this movie. I think he has a far better chance at that screenplay nomination. Overall, The Bikeriders, forgive the pun, is a joyride worth going on. It's the kind of movie you want mega movie stars like Austin Butler, Tom Hardy, and Jodi Comer to be a part of. And my hope is that if this is the first Jeff Nichols' movie you see, that you go back and watch his filmography, that you go back and watch Mud, that has an all-time great Matthew McConaughey performance. You watch Take Shelter. I mean, that final scene between Jessica Chastain and Michael Shannon is all-time great. Midnight Special is another movie that not enough people have seen. Adam Driver is terrific in that film in a small supporting role. So is Joel Edgerton, who is also terrific in Loving, along with Ruth Negga, who was nominated for an Oscar for her performance. See what I'm talking about? The actors in his movies are big names. You've all seen movies with Matthew McConaughey, Jessica Chastain, Michael Shannon, Ruth Negga. Well, guess what? Some of their best work have been in Jeff Nichols movies. I say all this wanting Jeff Nichols to become a more popular filmmaker. Like, I want you all to watch his films, but there's also a small part of me that likes the fact that I know this guy is one of the great living filmmakers, and not a lot of people also realize that. Like, there's something special and unique about that. I know that there are movie lovers who also feel this way about Jeff Nichols, but I also love the fact that he's not a super well-known name, that he's not a mainstream guy. He feels like a real artist, like he's a writer-director who cares about the movies he's making. He wants to work with movie stars. That's another thing I love about filmmakers. I love movie stars, and when they are in good movies like The Bikeriders, nothing makes me happier. I do think The Bikeriders is a good first Jeff Nichols movie to watch because it shows what he can do with movie stars. You will most likely not see a better trio than Jodi Comer, Austin Butler, and Tom Hardy in another 2024 movie. I love seeing actors go on amazing runs, and Austin Butler is on an amazing run. Elvis, Dune Part 2, and now The Bikeriders. I mean, that's 3 films in a row where he's co-starring with major movie stars Tom Hanks, Timothée Chalamet, and Tom Hardy, and working with great filmmakers Baz Luhrmann, Denis Villeneuve, and now Jeff Nichols. I don't want to give myself too much credit for this, but after seeing Butler in Quentin Tarantino's Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, along with Brad Pitt and Leonardo DiCaprio, I started to take him more seriously as an actor. I felt like big things were coming from him. Now, I didn't know this big of things were coming, but I felt like he was somebody to keep an eye on, and man, was I right. And if you're late to the party, it's time to start taking Austin Butler seriously, because he's not a one-hit wonder with Elvis. It feels like this guy is here to stay for a while. Thanks for listening to this edition of Pop Culture Spotlight. I'm Cameron McKinney, and there'll be a new episode of the podcast every Thursday on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. I highly recommend you check out Jeff Nichols' The Bikeriders. Next week on the podcast, I'm talking about the movie I Saw the TV Glow starring Justice Smith, so tune into that and please rate, review, and subscribe.